Hello, everybody. This is Gary Benoit, and today on Beyond the Cover, we are going to be discussing the Freedom Index, the New Americans' rating of every member of the U.S. House and U.S. Senate. And with me today for this discussion are Larry Greenley, Christian Gomez, and Peter Rykowski. And it's actually the four of us who comprise the team that every 6 months or thereabouts put together another installment of the Freedom Index. So Larry, I'd like to start with you. You've been doing this for many years. Would you like to explain what the Freedom Index is and why we are publishing it?
Okay, the Freedom Index, this is the current one that just was published in the New American Magazine. The Freedom Index has a subtitle, A Congressional Scorecard Based on the U.S. Constitution. So that tells a lot about it right off the bat. If we look at the Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, it says, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. So this is in our basic governing document, that we have a Congress and they have all legislative powers. Then when people are elected to become members of Congress in either the House or the Senate, they take an oath. And the oath is, quote, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So the basic idea is that each member of Congress takes an oath to support and defend the Constitution. So an important goal of the John Birch Society is to create an informed electorate that will work to elect members of Congress who will obey their oath to support and defend the Constitution. So the idea is that we are working to inform voters so that they can elect members of Congress who obey the Constitution. So therefore, the John Birch Society, through its affiliated magazine, The New American, publishes the Freedom of Index twice a year. And this is to help American voters to monitor how well their representatives and senators are obeying the Constitution. So the Freedom Index is a scorecard that reveals how well every member of Congress is obeying the Constitution as revealed by his or her votes on key legislation. A 100% score means that a member of Congress has a perfect score in obeying the Constitution on the key votes we select. We select 10 twice a year. So that's the basic definition.
Now, Christian, you're usually the person who actually puts together the index itself that shows all the pluses and all the minuses. How are the congressmen doing? Did they all get 100%?
They never all get 100%. Actually, this time it's somewhat odd because most Republicans got close to 100%. A lot of them did for partisan reasons with the new radicalism in the White House and so forth. But this time around we had we see a 49% is the average rating in the House of Representatives. So you had most Republicans getting a 90 or 100%, some 80 and 70 sprinkled in there, and most Democrats were getting a 0% on their Freedom Index score in the House.
Right. But as Larry pointed out, though, every congressman takes an oath to the Constitution.
That's right. So they're not all obeying that oath.
So shouldn't every congressman get 100%?
Well, they should if they took that oath and actually meant it.
Okay. So they take an oath to the Constitution, but they're not following the Constitution.
That's right. They're liars. Right.
Now, Peter, among the four of us, you write a lot of the descriptions explaining the votes that we put in the Freedom Index. What effect does that have when we get that information out? Do you get feedback as to how helpful this is in terms of people actually using the Freedom Index in the field? For example, are people shocked when they find out that maybe a congressman is getting a low score?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of legislation that goes through Congress that most voters don't even know is being considered in Congress.
Right.
And in the Freedom Index, there's so many bills. Now, we hear some of the more famous bills, like the For the People Act, H.R. 1 in the news, but there are so many other bills that are blatantly unconstitutional, blatantly violate the Constitution, which a constitutionalist Congress would reject without even thinking twice. but people don't even know about it. So to get that word out to people and tell them, this is what Congress is doing, these are the unconstitutional things that they're voting on, it's really powerful to people.
Okay. Could you give some examples, Peter, of the criteria that is used to determine whether or not a particular vote is determined or is selected to put in the Freedom Index to begin with? For example, big money bills, is that a factor?
Yeah. Well, if it spends trillions of dollars, much more than a typical bill, that's something that we would almost definitely put in the Freedom Index, because this is where our tax money is going.
Right.
And Congress is often spending even more than it takes in. So it's borrowing money, inflating the US dollar. So big spending bills definitely we would put in. And any other bill that blatantly violates the Constitution, if it's something egregious, like the For the People Act or the Equality Act, we would put it in the Freedom Index. Now, of course, we only have a limited number of votes, so we can't choose every single vote. We have to discriminate in that sense. But if it's something of that importance, yeah.
Yep. Larry, how do we determine whether or not something is constitutional? Let's say we put a vote in the Freedom Index and we say voting yay on that particular legislation is unconstitutional. But let's say the congressman comes back and says you're wrong, it is constitutional. How do we know whether or not it's unconstitutional or constitutional ourselves?
Well, we're interpreting the Constitution as we say, as originally intended by the founders. And Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution grants the powers to Congress that they have on the things they can legislate about. So it's a fairly restricted list, and if it's not there, chances are we'll have to say it's not constitutional. There might be some exceptions, but by and large, if a power is not given in Article 1, Section 8 to Congress to legislate about a certain thing, then we'd have to say it was unconstitutional for them to do that.
Right. Now, I do know, in addition to the main part of the Constitution, we also have the Bill of Rights that includes the 10th Amendment, and that says any powers not delegated to the federal government by the Constitution are reserved to the people or the states. So basically, if you look at this list of enumerated powers and you don't see a power there, well, it's unconstitutional.
Right.
Now, I know there are a lot of voting index that people can look at, and they can look at the ratings, and this congressman is 60%, another congressman might be 90%, but of course we go beyond the ratings. Not only do we specify a particular piece of legislation, but we also write a description, don't we? And Christian, how would you describe the descriptions that we write? And is it important for the readers of the Freedom Index to look at those descriptions as well as looking at the ratings themselves?
Absolutely. I mean, you could just look at the score if you're just curious what the number is, but if you want to know how we came to that determination, why a vote is negative or positive, you go to the description and you see, well, one, what is the vote about?
Right.
Like, for example, what is the coronavirus appropriations bill? What was in there? We'll have a short little summary of the contents of the bill, and then we'll have a smaller summary after that about our position, why we took the position, because it's unconstitutional, it's not authorized in the Constitution, or it spends this much money, or whatever reason that we're giving. Or if there's a bill to restrict firearms, we'll say, well, that violates clearly the Second Amendment of the Constitution. So this differentiates the Freedom Index from those other conservative indexes because it just rate you on principles of conservatism. We're rating you on whether you have a fidelity to the Constitution.
Right. So we're describing not just the legislation itself very succinctly, but we're also describing why that vote is constitutional or unconstitutional.
Exactly.
So, Peter, would you say that every description or every vote that we're looking at is basically a miniaturized constitutional lesson?
That's right. I mean, reading the Freedom Index, and I say this also for myself, it's very revealing, not just what's going on in Congress, but also very revealing on what the Constitution actually says and how the legislation compares to it. And more often than not, what's going on in Congress blatantly goes against what the Constitution actually says.
Right. Okay, well, thank you very much, Larry, Christian, and Peter. And we'll have to wrap up this episode of Beyond the Cover. And the next episode, we're going to drill down further, by the way, into the Freedom Index and look more closely at some of the actual votes. But for people who have not seen the Freedom Index and would like to do so, please look at the description at the bottom of this video and click on the links to find out how you can see the Freedom Index yourselves. Thank you very much.